Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Historical Humans podcast. My name is Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by my fellow co-hosts, Colum Coleman and Aaron Gilpin. And we figured since I'm back in South Dakota temporarily for work, we should talk about one of the most important figures in all of South Dakota history. And this time, it's not Laura Ingalls Wilder for some reason, but actually
Who?
Crazy Horse. Aaron, Laura Ingalls Wilder is the person who wrote Home on the Prairie. She's from South Dakota.
Never read it.
Oh.
The more you know.
Yeah, that's if we have anyone listening from South Dakota, they'll appreciate that reference.
Yeah, yeah. Just LeVar Burton rises behind us as we rip off the catchphrase.
Oh no, the Reading Rainbow. But we're talking about one of the most important indigenous leaders, a war chief named Crazy Horse, who was chief of the Oglala Band of Lakota. So very close to home here, and if you, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but the Crazy Horse Memorial is truly something to witness.
Yeah. But first, we have to talk about the man himself, who he was, what he did, why we should all flee before the mention of his name.
Oh God, the man, the myth, the
Yeah.
legend.
Yeah. Welcome to yet another installment of Great Men Are Not Good. They are simply terrifying.
I mean, he had a pretty good justification, a pretty
Oh,
good
oh,
cause.
oh yeah, yeah. But there's gonna be some bad things that everyone does here because uh, Crazy Horse lived during the mid 19th century. He was born in 1842, we believe, and we all know he died in 1877. So there were some things happening throughout the good old U.S. of A. during his life that well, let's just say it wasn't a pretty time to be alive.
Honestly, it was quite smart on the tribe's part because for whatever reason during that time span the United States military was fairly preoccupied and there weren't as many resources on the frontier as there had been previously.
Yep.
Yeah, wonder why.
Eh,
Yeah.
Totally, just probably bureaucracy stuff.
maybe it was an off
Yeah.
year, maybe not as many people volunteered.
Not enough gold in them there hills.
Oh, that comes later. We don't talk about that.
Oh no, it comes at the beginning.
Why? Why is it always gold, oil,
'Cause,
or some other extractive resource?
yeah. It's always gold. This is going to be the story of Crazy Horse's life in summary. Crazy Horse lives on his land and he lives with his people. Americans find gold. America goes to war with Crazy Horse.
Uh,
Need a little counter at the bottom of our screen here for just how many times this process repeats.
I really wish we could afford to pay an editor because I would love to know how many videos in total we've talked about just
Adding
wars
a
over.
counter.
Yeah.
We need a counter. We need an editor. We need to learn what we are doing with all of our podcast equipment. um,
We do
who
not
are we
get paid
kidding?
for
We're
this.
historians. We can barely figure out how to turn things on.
Exactly. So let's go back into history where we know something.
Yeah. So yes, as Justin mentioned earlier, Crazy Horse, his affiliation was the Oglala Band of the Lakota. They will also be referred to as the Teton or the Western Sioux. And this is one of the interesting nuances when you get into looking at tribal leaders and Native American tribes in the U.S. Is they often have more than one name or one affiliation, depending on how big of a group you're roping them into. And that's just an important thing to keep track of. Some of these names will be used interchangeably during a lot of sources, um, but we will do our best to try to keep referring to Crazy Horse specifically as the Oglala Bland of Lakota, but sometimes it's just going to be Lakota or Sioux because he does get into a lot of larger groups. But yeah, with that out of the way, he uh, operates out of the northern Great Plains, which I actually had to look up to check, but this is it's actually a pretty large area, all things considered.
Oh yeah, it spans pretty much from like the eastern part of South Dakota and North Dakota as far as like Montana and even Wyoming. And it's just
Yeah.
emptiness. There is nothing for all of those miles. If you have ever driven along I-90 in South Dakota, there is nothing.
Yep. Yeah. The reason there are towns in South Dakota is because when people were following that trail westward, they gave up on ever seeing the ocean and just stopped moving.
Actually, kind of cool is a lot of the original wagon trails are still around. They drove such deep ruts in the ground that you can still view them today from satellite.
Oh, shit! Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. A lot of them are on the National Register now.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, that's very fun. That's things you don't think of leaving behind is the literal wheel marks or tire treads that didn't have tires, but like that's not something you think of as like this will be history.
No. So, fun fact.
Yeah, fun fact. Speaking of fun facts, Crazy Chief is very
Crazy
unique.
horse.
Yeah, Crazy Horse.
Crazy chief.
He's
The
a,
new chief just
I will
dropped.
mix words. That's a different thing. Uh, anyway, Crazy Horse. He's very unique right out of the gate in terms of chiefs and chiefs of the code and all that stuff. See, almost every chieftain you see of his people wear the traditional war bonnet. They have a full feathered headdress. Crazy Horse refuses this honor. He instead keeps the single feather of the common warrior as his appendage, as his image. And he actually has a pretty fun reason for this. It is because in 1854, he embarked on a vision quest. And in that quest, he did attain a vision. He was met by a strange man. And this man gave onto him instructions so that he would be, to guide him, give him success, prosperity, greatness, whatever it is he's after. And their quests are a few things. They're kind of odd, but they're fairly simple. The first is that he's told to don the single feather. The second is that whenever he rides into battle, he must always dust his horse. And by this, we do not mean clean the horse. We mean literally take sand and throw it over the horse's back.
Actually, you laugh at it and it sounds ridiculous, but it actually does work as a form of camouflage and helped mask the horse's shape in the background. So like when you go into battle, it's a lot harder to see the pronounced like 6 foot creature that you are riding on if they're modeled in with the rest of the ground.
Yeah. And this and
No, it's
this
more. It's more just. I can imagine trying to do that with a horse that's just not desensitized yet. Just running around trying to just see. That's how he got his name. That's how he got his name. They thought, what is he doing? Why is he chasing that horse with a bucket of dirt?
No,
yeah.
Aaron, I think it's the other way around, where the horse was a sick puppy and wouldn't listen to commands or orders unless you dusted him in dirt. He's
Oh,
just
I
like,
like that.
I need to be ready. It's like,
But
no,
how
I'm
did he
clean.
actually get his name though? How did he actually get it?
Yeah. But yeah, this is
Because
this
like
ends
the
up being
names change a lot depending on the local culture tribe that he's a part of, right?
sorry. I didn't quite catch that. I don't think I would really know per se with
I think the
a
names
lot of this.
can change depending on feats and other things, but I think for the most part, once you get your name, it
Yeah.
sticks.
I
Okay.
believe one of the things that did mention with his name is he actually takes on his father's name,
Oh,
um, which was a little bit unorthodox as his father was still alive.
This is
no,
your
that's not
name
going to be
now.
confusing at all.
Yep.
It
To be fair,
also. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. No, to be fair, he was also never really much of a like rules type player. He didn't really care about those because When he embarks on his vision quest at the age of 12, he ignores all of the tribal safety warnings, skips several rituals, and just goes for it.
I mean, determination. But also, I think it's kind of important too to kind of to circle back a little bit with God, I hate the corporate speak that just came out there. I think it's important too with the war bonnet specifically. You earn those feathers for feats and things you've achieved in battle. So for him to only don a single feather, it's such an interesting, significant thing of like showing that you have earned this. However, that you're not embellishing in your feats, and you're almost hiding how many feats you do, and that adds to the mystique, the mystifying features of
Yeah. Oh
that
yeah.
decision.
Oh yeah. It becomes his signature look. He's really the only chief to do this, but it does have actually a practical application. See, when you fight US soldiers who all dress exactly the same and your people don't, they very quickly learn what signifies rank and shoot at it first.
True,
Hey,
yeah.
this guy's got a massive war bonnet on.
So,
He's probably someone we should
yeah,
just.
yeah, we should go for first. They shoot for rank, and these are Americans. They shoot rank, so it's like Crazy Horse could be any of them. He couldn't. He might not even be here. All you know is you're being attacked by 100 angry people on horses. You don't have any means of priority targeting.
Well, and like any good indigenous group at this time, they fought against United States Western expansion because this time frame, by the way, is coming just on the heels of James Buchanan's Manifest Destiny, where it was America's purpose, its dream, its only living feature is to just go westward. And, they hadn't cleared this area of the Indian problem yet.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, this Vision Quest is during James Buchanan.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this is more or less during his time, I believe, or at least immediately after that. So yeah, it's pretty bad. And honestly, Crazy Chief
Crazy
proves
horse.
himself. Yeah, I will call him Crazy Chief for the end of time here. But Crazy Horse proves himself a to be chieftain material here. Very early in his life, by the age of 23, he is a prominent figure in resisting westward expansion from the United States. He starts fighting as early as 1865, but he doesn't get his glories until 1866. And this is when the US turns its attention from the recently concluded Civil War towards the Dakotas.
Hey, he said the thing. He said the thing.
Yay, we did it.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah,
Again, why does it always have to go back to the Civil War?
Because
because
somebody
that's
didn't want to give up their slaves.
that's the time period where people are being interesting. Um, yeah, his number one opposition throughout his entire life is the U.S. attempting to sort of rush the gold fields in Montana.
I mean, Gold Rush is arguably a very American thing, and all a Gold Rush is when there's a discovery of gold, a lot of people head out there to try and stake their own claims, either get access to mine the lands themselves, or they get in with a company early on before the big expansions and
Yeah,
industrialization.
yeah.
Plus,
But
the
there's
U.S. having finished the Civil War, a gold rush was a very lucrative
Oh yeah.
endeavor.
and
Oh
gave
yeah.
a lot of former soldiers and young single men a place to go to work.
It gave a lot of active soldiers a place to go and work too, because we're gonna see some very big names come here right up at the beginning.
Oh no.
Because what we have happened for 1865 and 66, this conflict, is the Bozeman Trail, which was a existing route across the Indian territories that connected US controlled West Coast with the US controlled Midwest. And gold had been discovered in Montana along this trail. This prompted the United States government to begin building fortifications along this road, which lay in Indian Territory. To do this,
And
the
this is what
United
this is like
States of
the actual
America,
name of the territory. Like this is how the U.S. registered the names, right?
the
This wasn't
U.S.
the Indian Territory at that time. The Indian Territory referred to Oklahoma. This was the Dakota Territory.
That's right. This is the Dakota Territory. That's right. That's right. It's just Indian Territory is just Oklahoma. This is Native American land.
But yeah, that's probably a more appropriate way to put it.
Yeah,
Was it
this
was
is that's the
indigenous lands? But yeah, it
yeah.
was the Dakota
This
Territory, which was under United States control. However, up until this point, the United States never really had control over the region. They just kind of had a stake to the claim, and as time went on, people would just slowly encroach on the lands. And then there were battles. I mean, we talked about it in our Dakota Wars episode, where there were a lot of skirmishes and battles that happened on the fringes of settlements.
yeah that's gonna that the Dakota Wars are going to happen during Crazy Horse's life, and they're gonna prompt some violence on his part.
Again, strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
Wow, it's been a
But
while since we did the Dakota Wars, hasn't it?
yeah, it's
It's
been
been
a
a
little bit. Yeah.
bit.
Technically, it was last season,
Okay, but
but
this is also
but
our season four opener,
yes,
our
this is our
beginning.
opener, and with our opener, like every good season opener, it's good to call back to some major figures from past seasons, and that is why to enforce U.S. control of the Bozeman
Oh,
Trail, the United States government turns to none other than General William Tecumseh Sherman,
at least he
Uh,
changed his war tactics just a little bit.
the
And
man who marched to the sea.
the sad part is, for those of you playing at home, is all three of us went to a university where the first president of the university made a promise with the students that if they all passed their exams to become teachers, it was a normal school, they would he would join them and they would muster a unit for the Civil War. And they did. And he held true to his promise. And Charles Hovey became the leader of an entire battalion of teachers and students, and they joined William Tecumseh Sherman on their march to the sea. So there were a bunch of professors and college students laying waste to the south.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's pretty fun. But anyway, in this point, he's been ordered to build fortifications, not dismantle the entire infrastructure of a state.
Stealing
And
horses,
the
first beast of burden, burning down houses, mills.
Yep, yep. And this prompts a major armed response from the indigenous peoples living nearby, including Crazy Horse, who becomes a prominent figure in what is a very large misnomer. See, he participates in the raid that becomes known as the Fetterman Massacre of December 1866. Now, what's interesting about this massacre is that it occurred almost exclusively between soldiers of the United States Army and warriors of the Sioux and Lakota.
Almost like it was a
So,
battle, an armed conflict.
yeah. But massacre sells better, apparently.
I do think they
oh,
also ambushed them, which led to the massacre
Yeah.
moniker.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's actually a pretty fun ambush, and Crazy Horse gets the starring role. See, there was a fortress called Fort Phil Kearny in Wyoming Territory. And this fortress had in it a captain by the name of William Fetterman, who made the absolutely idiotic decision to sally out from the fort with 80 men to attack the Sioux. This man is not smart. What happened in order to get him out
oh,
is a chieftain by the name of High Backbone lures Fetterman away from the fort with a decoy rider. And it is a known Sioux tactic The U.S. knew about this.
Oh,
All right. This is why Fetterman's an idiot. Because the U.S. knew about this. The Sioux would have a rider ride within sight of the fort and appear to have, say, his horse fall on him and become trapped. This man is a decoy. His horse is just lying down. He is not stuck. But the U.S. soldiers would sally out of the fort on foot to go capture this man and interrogate him for what he knew of the tribe's movements. As they would approach the horse would spring up, the man would jump on it, he'd run away, and 100 more angry Sioux would spill out of the countryside shooting at them.
To be fair to the Sioux, this is like 200 years post colonization,
Yeah.
where word and ideas and thoughts and anti-European sentiment had spread through the indigenous areas as well. So they had a
Yeah.
pretty good idea of how they would react, and it's just a game of cat and mouse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna get. Fetterman's an idiot for falling for it, as he leads himself and his 80 men to their death, chasing after this decoy rider, who is none other than Crazy Horse himself.
80 men for one rider, though. That shows you how important they thought.
Yeah,
I mean, like they obviously were prepared for probably a smaller ambush.
yeah. The U.S. idea was that he's a lone rider, or at the very least part of a small hunting party, no more than a dozen men. That was how the U.S. saw it, and they saw it as a great opportunity to get intel on the Black Hills and on Mount Montana and the Dakotas and all this territory that these tribes had lived on for centuries that the U.S. knew nothing about. So, this was, it was an opportunity, but it's pretty stupid for trying to take it. This, unfortunately, backfires terribly on Crazy Horse and High Backbone and the rest of the Sioux.
Oh.
Because it reignites an anti-indigenous sentiment that had only just recently simmered down after the, shall we say, Dakota War of 1862. That particular uprising, which we have covered previously. See, this is just all callbacks. We're in the season opener here. We're bringing back everybody. So yeah, that had just finally blown over. The Civil War had helped to distract from it, but the Civil War is over, and everyone's kind of remembering just how much the Americans and the tribes hate each other. And oh boy, do they hate each other. And this massacre gets publicized as such because 80 men in a single engagement makes it the worst United States defeat against any Native American tribe to date.
And that is why you see the moniker massacre be applied here, is because they couldn't have defeated us if it were a fair fight. It was a massacre, an ambush.
Yep. Yeah, it wasn't 80 soldiers, but 80 young boys full of pride and prosperity and dreams.
And a promising young or what was he, a captain?
Captain, yep.
And
Promising
the
captain.
funny thing is, and what most people may not realize, is I believe Fetterman also went to school with a one George Custer.
Yep. He gonna come
Yeah.
up later, all right? Crazy Horse got a vendetta against this man's class.
A fair vendetta.
Yep. I'm gonna kill everybody from that group. But Crazy Horse, then distinguishes himself again in what is known as the Wagon Box Fight of 1867, which also happens near Fort Phil Kearny. Only this time it's part of a different Native American engagement known as Red Cloud's War, because it's fought under Chief Red Cloud. You'll notice the U.S. starts blaming the Native American tribes for things when they name all the wars, because it's always your war, your uprising. It's never
We were just
anything
peacefully
else.
here. We definitely didn't chase a bunch of people off.
Yeah. Yeah. Red Cloud's War. It's a 2-year war, 1866 to 68, and it's an alliance of the Dakota, the Cheyenne, and the Arapaho
The
against the
Arapaho.
United States.
It's Arapaho, and yeah,
Arapaho, yeah,
three of the most feared and vicious plains warrior tribes. All three of those groups are some of the fiercest warriors and have a really, really notorious reputation. So the fact that they all joined together to fight, it's like three of your worst enemies carrying
yep,
together.
yep. And this battle was, in fact, a raid. See, the U.S. is still trying to build Fort Phil Kearny. It's still trying to build all the forts along this Bozeman Trail. So, what do they make the forts out of?
What,
Yep, locally sourced wood.
which is not almost non-existent in
Yep,
the area.
yep. But there is enough trees to work with at this time, just enough. So the U.S. is sending out woodcutters. The Red Cloud here, he doesn't like that. So he orders an attack on the woodcutters to basically say, if your men can't collect lumber, you can't build your walls. You'll have to leave. This raid quickly turns into a bloody and pitched battle because the US is quicker to respond than Red Cloud anticipates. The fighting gets dug in, the tribes are winning, and the US opens up on their position with a full artillery bombardment.
Oh,
Naturally.
Yeah. And it's such a messy battle that there's very little known about how many people died. Estimates range somewhere between 2 indigenous people to 1,500.
it's a huge range.
Yeah. And the reason for
Mm,
that is different sources tell different stories. The newspapers report extremely high numbers, like 1,500. The soldiers report certain numbers. Some say all different numbers. Some say 600, some say 800, some say 100.
that's still not
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And
The,
that's like
yeah.
also a massively larger number than the losses with Fetterman,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
This is,
declared a massacre. So what was
yeah.
this?
Well, no, these are the number of Native Americans killed.
I know, but I'm just saying the
Yeah. What
hypocrisy.
was this? Yeah. This was fight. The number two comes from an interesting source, which is there's a book written by a man some decades after who makes the claim that he spoke with tribal members and says that the tribe regarded the battle of the wagon box fight here as a victory. And you don't lose 1,500 men in a victory.
That's true too.
And so he puts the number at 2 because he intends to place it below the number of US soldiers lost, which is 6.
I mean,
Yeah,
there is such thing as a Pyrrhic victory, but again, yeah, at that point
yeah,
it's questionable.
yeah, but because the US loses 4 woodcutters and 6 of the soldiers defending them.
I
You know,
do believe to a certain extent that there is also a margin of error where they could have lost 10 to 12 or even 20 and still considered it a victory just because they put a damper on the progress.
yeah,
One of those things of you knew you were going to lose people, but we also stopped progress kind of deal.
yeah, but again, that's where these wildly different numbers come from. The newspapers and a man making up a number to back what he claims he heard from the tribe. That's kind of where you get this massive range coming in, and just everybody and their cousin had a different number for how
S-
many people died here.
So
Yeah.
basically, we just don't really know.
Yeah, it's one of those great
Everything's sketchy.
mysteries. Yeah, yeah. But um, unfortunately, that's going to be it for Crazy Horse in this war, as Red Cloud's War will come to an end in 1868 with the Second Treaty of Fort Laramie,
Oh boy, that one is
which
not controversial at all.
which which Crazy Horse actively pisses on.
Could. He honestly should. That treaty is the biggest scam in the world.
Yep. Yep. He refused to attend. He refused to sign. He refused to acknowledge its existence.
And yet the United States still ratified it.
Yep. Yep. And also, to be fair, he is the leader, he is the war leader of one band of one tribe. He is not king of all the Dakota. He is not lord of all the Sioux.
No, but also on the same token, a lot of people that signed these treaties weren't even leaders of their own tribes. They were
Yeah.
just a tribal member. But the United States didn't differentiate. They said, well, they were a representative. They signed.
Yep.
Kind of like how the Romans preferred to deal with kings.
Yeah, it's
And if they didn't have a king, they just said someone.
yep.
The US military decided to do the same thing
Yep. Now,
instead of bothering learning the actual tribal systems that they operated in.
Yeah, but it didn't
now,
matter. They had legally done what they needed to.
yep. Now, this treaty has one provision that's important to the story of Crazy Horse's life, and that is that it acknowledges a certain degree of indigenous control of some areas. Namely, the US agrees to abandon the forts that were under construction along the Bozeman Trail, the thing that provoked the war. And this effectively concedes the Black Hills and some other lands to the tribes. This is effectively the US sort of saying we give up on trying to directly control this territory.
Which the Black Hills, the United States would later discover gold in and then forcibly sign additional treaties to subjugate that land.
Yeah. Now, yeah, that actually comes up later because guess who fights them over that?
Good.
Crazy horse.
It's Crazy Horse.
I'm starting to think this man may not be the villain. We all.
He's
I don't think he really was in
he's
the
not the
first
villain,
place.
but you should be afraid of him because he gets very good at war.
I would too if someone kept trying to steal my land. Like
But
literally setting up a tent in my backyard claiming it's a fort. Yeah, I would be pissed.
yep,
I'm gonna do that to you.
yep. And then calling in a drone strike when you object.
Yeah, literally. Starts cutting down your heirloom cherry tree, and yeah.
I was gonna be positioned like in the back with like 7 forms of artillery, be like, right, it's mine now.
Aaron,
Okay, well,
get out of my backyard.
that's my
Aaron,
yard now. The
Aaron,
cannons say so.
Wait,
you,
have
you
you
can't
seen the little
you can't take
Amazon things
Justin's
where you
black
can
horse and
get
cherry
the
tree.
firecracker artillery units?
Yeah.
That's what you're lining up and shooting at my house from the backyard.
No, it's gonna be fully functional ones. I can.
Oh please, you could take him out with a Roman candle.
Hey, you got a point. I can get more of those anyway. I
Anyway,
saw the
but
protests in Georgia,
I
just
know.
the
anyway,
country.
anyway, it's time for our briefest segment of all: Crazy Horse in a time of peace. What does he do? Well,
War.
nope.
Oh.
He moves to Buffalo Country, which was still completely unceded. It's land that the U.S. government hasn't even really tried to touch.
Wow, I didn't know that's the origin of Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
That was
Unfortunately
a
not.
bad one.
Unfortunately not. And from there, he continues to wage war with everyone who is not him. He wages war with the other tribes. He wages war with any white people that come across his land.
I mean, I can't speak specifically for the Sioux, but in certain tribal cultures, you have a war chief and then you have like a chief when there's peace. So for certain war chiefs, it was beneficial to just maintain the fighting.
Yep. And as a part of this, in 1868, the same year as this peace treaty, heavy air quotes there, he decides that he is going to abduct his lady love. For you see, Crazy Horse had long been in love with someone known as Black Buffalo Woman. And Black Buffalo Woman had been married to a man named No Water for many years. I believe as far back as 57.
No wonder
So,
she would leave him if he had no water.
yep,
How can
yep,
you provide
yep.
for me if you can't provide no water?
Now, what's funny is Crazy Horse had continued to romance her and court her despite the fact that she was married
What?
A tale as old as time.
until one day they agreed to elope and they spend one night together in 1868, and the next day No Water catches up to them and he is very angry.
Understandable.
Yeah, what'd he do? Did he attack Crazy Horse?
He shot Crazy Horse through the nose and then
Ooh.
broke his jaw.
God
Through the
damn.
wait, like sideways, like the bullet went this way.
We I do not have the information. It just says shot Crazy Horse's nose in all the sources, all the stories. He got shot in the nose. Whether it's with a gun or an arrow, who can say?
Yikes.
Presumably, it was sideways, given the fact that he lived. Uh, you know, broke his jaw, took Black Buffalo Woman back, and the two of them agreed to let it end there. I
Dude got
believe.
humbled hard, I
Yep.
guess.
But
I
also
believe.
get cooked for the night. That's awful.
Yep. I believe there was an exchange of a single horse from No Water to Crazy Horse for the excessive violence,
He got a horse out of it?
and in exchange for Crazy Horse taking all the blame for seducing Black Buffalo Woman, and more or less him admitting fault, which is a big deal for an acting war chief.
I mean, that's an embarrassment in any culture.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, both groups kind of got something out of it, and both agreed to just stop.
Wow. You know, that it takes a lot for that kind of agreement to end without death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I believe the only other condition was that Black Buffalo Woman was not to be considered uh, accountable for any action she may have taken.
But it takes two to tango.
Yeah, that was part of the agreement. That was part of Crazy Horse backing down and No Water backing down. That was why there was the Crazy Horse was willing to let you embarrass him, just
Is
not hurt his girlfriend.
I
she
just
wasn't like coerced or anything like that?
She was seduced. Also, I think,
you
and
just
I could be
kind of
wrong on this.
pity you just kind of pity no water. Like that is
I think
sad.
also I think bridal abduction is a real thing out in the Black Hills at this time. I could be mistaken on that, but I think the Sioux practiced that. So
So it wasn't exactly consensual.
yeah, no. But the two of them had been you know courting for 11 years.
I don't think it was quite like I think it was more seducing. I think they had an affair and
Yeah,
it culminated in that one night and then
yeah,
either it didn't go great or they realized the folly of their way, but ooh,
yep, yep. However, this does lead to marital bliss.
oh no.
For 3 years later, he marries Black Shal, a fellow Oglala Lakota, marries her in 1871. He meets her when he has to ask for someone to please tend to his broken jaw and shot nose, and she is the one who does it. So rebound fast.
Real Romeo there, huh?
Falls in love with the next woman he meets.
I mean, they always say don't let your girlfriend prevent you from meeting your wife.
Yep. Uh, he has
Bad.
a daughter with this woman who personally I think has the best tribal name of anyone
Oh,
ever, and
absolutely. This is
I
an
will
all
die on
timer.
this. I will die on this hill. Uh, Aaron, would you like to read what Crazy Horse and Black Shawl named their infant child?
Look, I don't have it pulled up.
Oh no.
Oh,
Yep.
it has got to be one of the best names. How much longer can we
Yeah,
forestall?
it's born in 1872. Oh yes, this
1872.
lovely little girl, pride of her father's life. What would he name her?
No, too far, too far. Ah, that's the name.
Yes.
That's the name.
They were afraid of her.
Yeah, that baby came popping out and they go, "Ooh,
Real who's on first situation, I think.
It's
they were afraid of her.
they were afraid of her. Who? Everyone.
I mean,
Oh,
to
she
be
did not live
fair,
long.
the child
Two
of
years.
Crazy Horse would be intimidating.
Yeah.
She only lived 2 years, unfortunately.
Yeah,
That's
unfortunately,
sad.
she does die in infancy. This is his only child.
I also think that the next segment is related.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh,
Because in 1874, that same year the child unfortunately dies, gold was discovered in the Black Hills in the Dakota Territory. And this prompted so many white settlers to come in and prospectors that basically would just squat on indigenous land. And it violated pretty much every provision and section of the treaty, just outright. And the United States,
Hmm.
for their for their knowledge, do you know how they addressed the issue? Do you know how they solved this problem?
they ignored the treaty.
Oh yeah.
They
They yeah.
sent General George Crook to remove Crazy Horse.
Yep. Now General Crook is not famous at the time he faces Crazy Horse.
Another great name though, all time.
Yeah. George Crook receives the name uh, Nantan Lupan from the Apache because this is the man who will go on to face down Geronimo.
Damn.
So we've got another big player in here. This is the was it Super Smash Bros. A new challenger approaches.
What is this, a crossover episode?
Dun dun
Yeah.
dun 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 dun. Dun.
I think that's
Yep.
copyrighted.
Not with
Yep.
my poor rendition.
Now now Crook, he's a veteran of the Civil War, and so he understands that protracted engagement is not good for anyone. So he immediately embarks for all of Crazy Horse's winter encampments. He will go into these hills and he will root them out.
How does that go for him?
Not well. It turns out the hills are much bigger than the US had realized because they haven't mapped this land.
The hills
And
have
would you say
eyes.
those? Oh, that's exactly what I was going for.
So Crazy Horse retreats deeper into the hills, and he in fact retreats to somewhere they would never expect, another tribe. For you see, Crazy Horse and the Oglala Lakota were allies of the Cheyenne.
Told you,
And so he
warrior
just goes
tribe.
to the Cheyenne's territory and says, "Hey, they're coming over the hills. Let us in." And they
Well,
do.
and it's one of those things of a lot of these tribes at this time were so acutely aware of when the white man comes, only bad things come with it. So they
Yep.
were definitely enticed to try and protect their neighbor's land because, you know, if they move next to your neighbor, you know you're next.
Yep. Which is why Crazy Horse and the Cheyenne ambush Crook at Rosebud Valley in 1876 and force him to flee the hills. You'd think that'd be the end of it.
Wait, is this ain't the song? No, wait, never mind.
What are you gonna tell me next? He marches off to Bighorn and fights Custer, because I think that's the only way you could possibly go up from here.
Yep. Yep. That is exactly what he does.
Oh
Oh
See,
my
my
god.
Crazy Horse,
god.
having pushed Crook out of the hills, is now free to move about. And he makes the decision to join with the main Sioux war camp at Little Bighorn, which is presently being run by Chief Sitting Bull.
Oh my god.
Yep.
That is, yeah, he topped it. He
Yep.
the only way you could go up is go to Little Bighorn, and there he was.
Yep. And what's an interesting part of the Battle of Rosebud is the two of the leading members of this battle is Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. Sitting Bull effectively meets Crazy Horse for the Battle of Rosebud and says, "Hey, come back with me. We've got big stuff planning."
Wake the
No.
fuck up, samurai. We have a city to burn.
Yep. Yep. And just with some more context for Rosebud and to understand why Crook is really such a bad man in this part of history.
Other than his name kind of giving it away.
Yeah, his name gives it away. Oh yes, this is full on mustache twirling, snidely whiplash levels of villainy this man will
Was he
achieve.
tying women to railroad tracks too?
Oh no, the trolley problem.
No,
One in one side and five on the other.
no, he was bulldozing your ancestral village to make way for the railroad.
To tie women to.
Yep. Now, Crook had spent his campaign in the Black Hills specifically targeting Crazy Horse. He had singled him out as a relentless and unreasonable war chief, something to do with him completely eschewing the Second Treaty of Fort Laramie.
I don't know what we know. I
Yeah.
don't know nothing about that.
Yeah, why would you sign that?
And he was the only reason Crook was in Rosebud Valley was because he had just raided a village. And we're going to leave the details of that off because we do not want to be demonetized.
Ugh.
That he had believed belonged to Crazy Horse.
Is
They did.
this is
They
this
didn't
the
even know.
inspiration for the Aerosmith song?
I don't know what song you're referring to.
Never heard Run for the Hills?
Nope.
Run for the hills. Right?
Yeah. Nope. Sorry, guys.
Wow.
Anyways.
Yeah. But
So he was.
the
Wait, hold on. So what
it
you're
was.
saying is Cook was a generational hater. He was so determined to end this man's career that he chased him through the hills.
Yep. And it's pretty
He's a
bad.
dedicated actor. Hell yeah.
It's
What the
pretty
hell,
bad.
man?
It's so bad with this raid in particular because he thinks he's targeting Crazy Horse. The village he burns down has nothing to do with Crazy Horse. They're unaffiliated. I'm not even sure they knew they were at war.
So he just committed a casual war crime. No biggie.
Yep.
Just burned down the
Yep.
village. Who cares?
And he's marching through Rosebud Valley, having returned from that village, going, darn, these natives, they just won't give up Crazy Horse. They kept screaming, who the hell is that?
Oh, I could almost hear his name through the cries of the people in the burning village.
Yep. And
Who's Crazy Horse?
yep.
Jesus Christ. This man really just said they're native. They must know him.
Yep.
They all know each other, Aaron.
That is the mentality. That is the mentality. Listen, if this guy got his compass reversed and found himself in Oklahoma, he would be attacking the Cherokee, going, "Where is he? Where is he?" That's how bad this man is.
Jesus Christ. He was just out for blood. That's all it was. It is beyond normal levels of
Yeah,
hate.
no, he was no longer in war. He was hunting.
We must cleanse the Black Hills, so to make them safe for settlement and civilization. This
And
is
pollution
the
due
mentality.
to mining.
And there be gold in these hills.
Yep, this is the mentality of the U.S., and it is not pretty.
Guys, are we the baddies?
We're always the baddies, except when we're not.
We had this
And even then, I think
conversation.
we kind of are.
We had this conversation ahead of time. Americans are just oil Romans.
Yep.
Yeah.
Civilize the world, but at what cost?
Oil.
So much
And-
cost.
Climate change.
Yeah.
Oil.
Yep. But speaking of things that are a big deal, this is where we get the Battle of Little Bighorn here against Lieutenant Colonel George Custer, June 25th, 1876.
Yeah, it was. The sad part is, it's really where Custer is most well known because it is one of, they call it one of the more epic last stands, even though Custer and about 200 of his soldiers, the entire battalion of the 7th Cavalry, died in this battle. And it all happened because Custer was overconfident and split his army into four separate groups, where Crazy Horse countered with several thousand natives and led them against Custer.
Yeah.
This man went to West Point. I specifically remember him actually having gone to West Point, which is like the peak
Yeah, he was
of
a West Point grad.
like U.S. military academy and whatnot. Um, he took on he used the divide and conquer tactic on a numerically superior opponent.
Yes, yes, he did.
Yeah.
This man could have this man would have led the charge of the light
So,
brigade
do
if
you
he
want
could
to
have.
know what
He,
is very interesting too? Is part of what really gave Custer the notoriety that he had was he led part of the Battle of Gettysburg that let the Union win against the Confederates. It was
Oh,
Custer's
yeah.
moves and his
Yeah.
planning and decisiveness in battle that helped them win. That's
Yeah.
why he was given charge over an entire battalion.
Yeah.
don't make me like this man.
No,
Don't make this man a war hero.
Custer's actually a very good war hero. See, at Gettysburg, the same things that get him killed at Little Bighorn actually saved the U.S. Army. Custer is a shock and awe cavalryman, and he likes to split his forces up, route behind his enemies, and annihilate them from behind. And against a set piece infantry and artillery based Southern army, this worked wonders.
Okay.
Against a cavalry based tribal raiding party, not so much.
So what you're saying is that the Dakota could have beaten the Confederates in war.
I'm saying the Dakota could
Hold
have
on.
won a battle or two. They just didn't. I don't think they
I
had the
think they would
numbers.
have done a great job fucking up Texas then.
Yeah, but basically, Custer, he may not be brilliant because he has one setting, but he had valid tactics. It's just he was very foolish for relying on those tactics and not recognizing he was facing a very different type of enemy.
Okay, so
At,
he's still stupid. Okay,
yeah,
that's all
Well,
I need.
admittedly, and this is where United States military tactics really came under fire, is the United States hardly changed their military tactics for over a century. They
yeah,
taught the same things. They used the same moves. That's part of why the Civil War was so deadly, was they very seldom actually adapted to their environment and adapted their strategy. Sherman's March to the Sea is probably the biggest deviation we've seen, and it
yeah,
wasn't until much later during the Spanish American War and even World War One where we saw the US actually pivot their strategy because we just were straight up losing way too many people.
yeah. And the thing is, like with
Because
Custer
like
here,
most of the casualties in the Civil War itself was just disease for the most part.
yeah,
Those are the
yeah,
biggest cause.
the U.S. not only lacked logistics at this time, they also lacked a lot of basic doctrine that we take for granted with modern militaries today, such as the concept of acknowledging rate of fire.
I mean, those Henry rifles.
Yeah, Gatlings, reloading, numbers, none of that was ever accounted for when planning out your strategy.
Rank and file seems to fall apart really quickly when you take
Yeah.
into account rate of fire.
Yeah, and that's what the US is spending these years learning. And that's what Custer ends up learning.
It
Custer
also just
Unfortunately,
it also just
Custer
goes to show though that
yeah,
traditional military tactics don't work against unconventional enemies.
you
yeah,
mean guerrilla warfare?
yeah. Custer also did not
Borderline.
realize
So it's
how far
raiding
up shit
warfare.
creek he was.
Yeah.
He had some bad intel at the start of the day, which allowed him to believe that the main tribal force was elsewhere, or at the very least, distant. It was not. And by the time he realizes that and tries to recall his other divisions to him, he's already surrounded.
Oof. That has to be a
And
terrifying thing because, like, in indigenous warfare, their war cries, their screams are brutal.
yeah, yeah, he's expecting to be outnumbered no more than 2-1, and he's outnumbered 10-1 in this
Ooh.
fight. So 2-1 he can still take. That's why he can split his army up into smaller groups and say find them. But 10-1, he's just dead.
Yeah. Yikes.
Yeah, and it's he fights to the end like a good warrior, but you know he's dead.
There were some
And
interesting stories about the man who killed Custer and the tales that came out afterwards.
oh yeah, yeah. There's
Yeah,
some
we
fun
probably
stuff in
covered
there.
them in the Dakota episode, the Dakota Wars.
Mm. No, he didn't cover anything about Custer in the Dakota Wars. He
Oh,
doesn't
we
fight
didn't?
them.
No.
No, he you know, he fought in the Civil War and he fought in the
Oh, so it was
North.
just like right after. Okay.
Yeah. He fights in this war here against Crazy Horse, the Plains Wars, and this decisive native victory is a massive shock to the U.S. public. Like, remember earlier when we said in '68 that 80 men was the worst loss the U.S. had ever felt, by native hands?
Well, this is at least 201.
Yeah,
This is
this
the
is
worst loss.
they've more than doubled that
The
number.
worst loss yet so far.
Yep, and because of this savage and heart-wrenching tragedy, the U.S. public demands vengeance for this unprovoked assault against citizens of the United States of America.
But they were also soldiers.
They're also citizens. We have a citizen soldierly
Oh, Jesus.
or a soldier citizenry. Take your pick. Yep.
Anything to rile
And
up the public.
yep. And this will be the worst defeat of the Plains Wars, which is all the battles out here in the Midwest between the United States and all the Native American tribes of the Plains. Lasts from 54 to 79. And yeah, it's pretty brutal. It's nice little umbrella category for every single engagement that just crops up.
Well, and that's really what a lot of these wars were. Weren't like direct warfare so much as a series of engagements and battles.
Yeah. And that's why when you break it down to some of the smaller stuff, you get conflicts named after the chief that was being fought that time, Red Cloud, things like that. Yeah. Now, Crazy Horse assumes it's done. We've killed 200 US soldiers in a single blow. Surely they have realized that we, the Sioux, the Dakota, are an independent and indomitable force.
I guess he didn't get the memo about the total number of losses during the Civil War.
Nope.
Yeah, we'll just keep throwing men into the meat grinder.
Yep. Yep. So to avenge Lieutenant Colonel Custer, the U.S. sends Colonel Nelson Miles. Miles is a war criminal.
Aren't they all?
This is a bit of a theme.
Yep. Yep. Now, Miles is assigned to pursue Crazy Horse as part of this increased U.S. Army effort to force all tribes to submit to a government agency. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Now, Miles gets to be a war criminal for several reasons. First of which is Miles starts off offering peace. He basically goes to Crazy Horse and says, "Hey, you've been fighting us a long time. We've been fighting you. Let us meet and be done with it." Promises fair treatment, good terms. Just sit down and negotiate an end to hostilities.
Because we know the United States is really good about that, and especially even better about honoring that.
Yep. So Crazy Horse is smart. He doesn't send himself in first, he sends a couple emissaries.
Yikes.
As soon as they're in range, Nelson orders his entire armada to open fire and guns them down. Because, I just killed Crazy Horse. I've
What are you
won.
talking about? He's still out there. What do you mean? We just
Yep.
killed him. Isn't that
Yep.
not him?
Yep. This
No.
is where looking like the average soldier really starts paying off for Crazy Horse. Yeah. Now, Crazy Horse agrees to meet with Miles because the winter that Miles comes into the Black Hills to start his pursuit and, effectively forces Crazy Horse to retreat from his winter settlements is extremely harsh, and his people are suffering from malnutrition.
Well, yeah, you're not able to farm. You're not even able to subsist well if you're being hunted and pursued.
Yep.
Yikes.
To make matters worse, the prospectors are armed. And they're just everywhere in the hills, and they'll shoot you on sight. So his people are just getting ambushed by random camps of 3 or 4 men in the woods. It's bad. It's bad. He's lost control of the territory. And, on May 6th of 1877, he acknowledges this. He surrenders to General Crook. And this is where we get to play War Crime Simulator once again.
Yikes.
So he agrees. He goes on the 7th to surrender to General Crook at the Red Cloud Agency in Nebraska. Now, in order to come to the terms to then meet with Crook, Crazy Horse had negotiated with a man known as Lieutenant Philo Clark. And he is offered his own reservation in exchange for surrender. His people have their own land separate from all other peoples. And the negotiations that take place between Crazy Horse and Crook are very heavily misunderstood because Crazy Horse does not speak a word of English.
God fucking damn it.
And Crook's interpreter takes some hefty liberties with the things he tells both parties. Most famously, at one point, Crazy Horse objects very strongly to some terms he sees as insults towards his people. To which the interpreter, he takes advantage of the moment, turns to General Crook and says, if this is what you offer, he will not rest until he has killed every white man in America. This causes Crook to become almost immediately hostile to Crazy Horse.
Ugh. I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
Yep. To make matters worse, Crazy Horse refused to go to Washington. He would stay with his people to negotiate with his people on their behalf. And the U.S. Army took this as a sign of bad faith. It's almost like they don't trust us.
I wonder why.
Yeah, we've been nothing but violent. I mean good to these people. And this negotiation also has some major issues for Crazy Horse and his public image. Because no one knows what's going on in this room. Except the interpreter, who we've already established is a liar. And so rumors start spreading throughout the indigenous tribes with Crazy Horse and beyond that Crazy Horse is in fact making a deal with the United States government to install him as chief of all Sioux.
What the fuck?
Yeah,
They really pulled out every tactic to try and subjugate the tribes.
Yep. This causes
But
members.
why would they even believe them?
Well, that's just it. The point of this is to cause division. Some members of Crazy Horse's tribe believe that Crazy Horse is trying to do this and object. Some don't. Other tribes and other chiefs object on principle and begin arming themselves against Crazy Horse, effectively ensuring that Crazy Horse cannot leave this encampment without a deal with the US, or he will face annihilation from his former allies. Because think about it, you're Sitting Bull. Are you going to kneel before Crazy Horse? Sure, he's been your brother in battle a few times, but do you really want to bow to that man? You're a chief. That it's preying on the fragility of tribal alliance. To make matters worse, the U.S. also offered Crazy Horse a job.
Of course. Let me guess, to do their dirty work for them.
Yep. They wanted him to fight on the U.S. Army's behalf to prevent losses against the Nez Perce Indians.
Oh, jeez.
And Crazy
Are you
Horse.
telling me they tried to make an auxiliary military unit out of him?
Of
Yep.
course,
people.
it's the same thing they did with freedmen in the Civil War. It's the same thing they did with minority people in World War One and World War Two. You send them off to the front lines, they deal with the first waves of battle, and then you come marching in and save the day with
Yep.
minimal losses to your kind.
Yep. And Crazy Horse is so against this idea that when he sees some of his people have signed up to fight because they're warriors, they're looking for job as warrior, he storms out of the negotiation hall, which prompts the US to arrest his ass. Because, this is a negotiation. I mean, a hostage situation. I mean, a negotiation.
Yeah, it's a negotiation until you stop willing to can participate and commit to it, and then in which case you become hostile. Fucking hell.
Yep. Now, it takes him a day to get him, and he loses because of his own good nature.
Oh no.
See, Crazy Horse understood his storming out as an act of protest, and thus, after waiting a day, returned to Fort Robinson to negotiate with, to resume negotiations. The U.S. took his storming out as a declaration of war against all of mankind.
Oh my god.
Because keep in mind, the interpreter is saying he wants to kill every white person in North America.
Yeah, he's like, I don't think you guys are negotiating fairly. He wants to kill you all.
Yep.
He's trying to end your civilization, your bloodline.
Yep. He demands to know if you have brought women and children, so he may butcher them in front of you.
Hey guys, can I just get a glass of water?
You will drink from your skull with wine red as blood.
Jeez.
Yep. Now, soldiers attempt to confine him in a guardhouse, and once Crazy Horse realizes what's happening, that he's been betrayed, he starts a brawl.
Yeah.
I mean,
Attaboy.
don't go quietly.
Yep. A brawl in which he is beaten to death.
Oh.
And yeah, that's it's unfortunate that is how his story ends.
This is not a great start. This is not a happy start to the season.
However, there is some there's one positive that I'm personally a huge fan of, and I alluded to earlier, is that after the Americans decided to carve Mount Rushmore into the Black Hills, permanently scarring the landscape, especially because that mountain was sacred to the Lakota and Dakota, they decided to combat that. And while it wasn't an indigenous endeavor originally, it is vastly supported by the indigenous, and that is the Crazy Horse Memorial that is under construction at Thunderhead Mountain in the Black Hills. And this project has been going on for almost a century now, where they have been actively carving it without any sort of government money. They refuse to accept any sort of government grant or financing to finish the project. instead choosing to work on it themselves. And it is still under construction. They have a good part of his face carved, and now they're starting to carve out his hand as it's reaching out to the landscape. And they're going to carve a horse with it and everything.
Yeah, and this mountain, which is, I believe, was it Thunderhead
Thunderhead, yeah.
Mountain? Yep,
Do we have a link to the
it's
donation site?
it's much bigger. It's much bigger than Mount Rushmore ever was.
Yeah, I
And
know it's supposed to be colossal.
Oh, it is
yeah, it is.
ginormous.
It is. It is like I'm pretty sure Crazy Horse's like figure is larger than the entirety of all the presidents on Rushmore combined.
Yeah, because didn't before it was Rushmore, it was like something like the 4 or 5 grandfathers.
It was the grandfathers, I believe.
I don't know if they had a number associated with it, but
They did.
Yeah,
I'm not
uh,
sure the specific number, but
it's six. It's six
the
grandfathers.
6 grandfathers. Okay.
they are quite literally carving the entirety of this mountain, and you can see here the face is carved. You have the hand, and then the horse will be off to the right hand side. And when you go see this in person, it is truly, truly ginormous. Like you look at it from about a half a mile away is where the viewer center is, and then they have a miniature version that is pre-carved that you could see what it's going to look like. And when you look at it from an angle, it lines up with the actual mountain and everything.
Oh, that's cool.
It is very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. It's a much more elaborate design. I
You know,
personally
fuck
don't really.
Rushmore. That's cooler.
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally don't get behind a lot of the mountain carving thing, but it's their mountain and they're behind it.
Well, they
Let 'em
support it.
go.
They're not behind it. I believe
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah,
original artist was Polish.
yeah. The original artist was not Native American, but simply put, the tribes behind it, it's their mountains.
Korczak Zylakowski.
Yeah,
Yikes, that's a name, hard name to say. But it's run by a. The original memorial was commissioned by Henry Standing Bear, who was in Oglala, Lakota.
yeah. Same band. That's Crazy Horse. Yeah.
So very, very interesting, and a great monument, and it's still under construction to this day. So if you ever make your way out to the Black Hills, highly recommend going to check it out. And I think that's actually probably a great point for us to wrap up today's episode. We talked about one of the greatest indigenous leaders that have been out there and how he outwitted the American soldiers on a few cases or origins. And yeah, any last final thoughts before we wrap up?
Are you gonna put the link in the description?
Yeah, I'll link their website in the description.
Yay.
Yeah, so be sure to donate, go visit, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.